Hello, everybody. My name is Taha. I am an open source engineer at CodeMagic. I make contribution to the Flutter framework. And today I'm going to be talking about Material 3, migrating a Flutter app to Material 3, assuming you're using Material 2. So this entire slide is made in Flutter. It's just a big card widget with box decoration, text widget, circle avatar, and icon. The reason why I made this slides in Flutter because I wanted to show what are the effects of the typography, color scheme, and text widget, all kinds of stuff. So in the next slide, it will make sense. So if you have read the recent releases, you will see this flag, use material 3 flag. I really wanted to talk about why this flag was required and what happens when you enable this flag. Because this flag enables material 3. Everybody knows that, yeah. So there was an idea called material 3 flag. The idea was to bring together a group of material 3 features to your Flutter app so they could become part of your Flutter app to make sure you can upgrade your Flutter app without breaking them. Sorry about my speech. This is just a modified code, Nick Fury code to Nick Flutter code. It's not a real person. So this flag is set to false by default. It is a bool flag. So when you use this flag, you enable material 3 features, which is pretty easy to understand. So where do you use this flag? You use this flag in the theme data constructor. When you set this flag to true, there are a lot of things happening in your app. Some are very visual, some are under the hood. And I have seen some users on GitHub using this flag in copy with method. This would not work because you're making a copy of theme data and then you're setting bool to true, but it won't regenerate your theme data defaults. I'll talk about the default in the next slide. So you should be using this flag in the constructor itself, and then when you make a copy, all the defaults are copied to a new theme data. So make sure about that. And then I'm talking about the defaults. There are a bunch of defaults in theme data. If you're creating a new app, you will see these defaults like default app bar, default floating action button, color. But if you have a production app and you're using theme for every widget, then you might not notice anything. When you enable this flag, nothing will happen because the app is very customized and you have themes for every widget. But there are some of the things that are happening you should be aware of. One, it will change the base color scheme, which is what all the widgets use in Flutter. And then it also updates typography set. You will see that it says headline 3 is deprecated. I'll talk about that in the later slides. And if you run Flutter app on Android, you will see that when you press Inkwell, it will have a different sparkle effect, which is an Android feature. You have to run your app on Android, and it should be directly on Android, not web on Android, to see this effect. A couple of releases back, there was a stretch overscroll effect that was added. Previously, when you overscroll a list, you will see a glowing effect. But in Android, they introduced stretch effect, which stretches every item in the list. This feature is also available under this flag. And shapes, this is my favorite part. A lot of the widgets have different shapes now. And some are really rounded, some are semi-rounded. When you enable Material 3, you will notice this kind of shapes taking effect in your app. And when you enable Material 3, you're enabling it in the theme data, which is just an object, right? Here in the screenshot, you can see it's using theme data, which is light theme technically, but you can also set brightness to dark if you want, if you have just dark mode in your app. If you don't even set any brightness, it will be creating a light theme, right, which makes sense. But if you want to create a dark theme, you can set your own brightness, which will create a new set of color scheme in dark. You can see I'm still using the same Flutter widget, so the slide is also dark because of that, after I set the brightness to dark. So now you can see why I created this slide in Flutter. So when we look at all the colors in color scheme, you will notice there are some new colors. There are some new names. Some are familiar, some are odd, some are new. You can see this is a very easy to understand what they do. There is a primary color, there is a primary container, and then background, surface. These are like very intuitive. But once you use widget, you will understand which widgets are using which colors. So when we set this flag, what it is doing is just creating a color scheme with a seed color, which is some purple color, which is default by Google on Flutter and Android, right? And it's happening under the hood. You don't have to do anything. And then it's also changing the topography set to a new set of topography, which is called Topography 2021. When you use Material 2, it's using Topography 2014. So there are new names and new groups in Material 2020 topography. It's also changing the splash factory, which I talked about previously, the ink sparkle effect, where you have to run the app on Android to see that effect. What happens if I view the same colors in Material 2? You can see it doesn't look good. All the colors are matching. This doesn't look as pretty as Material 3. And there is a segmented button on the top. I forgot to mention that. There is a segmented button on the top. In Material 2, the segmented border is gone. Why? Because if you look at the Material 3 color scheme, there is the on-surface color and surface color. In Material 2, there is a surface color and variant color. The outline color is using the surface variant color, so it's missing. And you can see that inverse color is completely gone. There is no inverse primary, it's blank. So when you use Material 3 flag, you can't use the same colors as the Material 3 because it's not compatible. What if you want to create your own color scheme? Just like the baseline color scheme, instead of using a particular purple color, you want to create your own color scheme. Here I'm creating a color scheme in green, you can see, and the slide is also updated to green. It's just using one color, and the Flutter uses something called Material Color Utilities package, which has all the algorithms and tools to create an entire color scheme with one color. You just have to say green is creating an entirely green color scheme. You can see, this is the same baseline color scheme, but it's using green to create all the variants of this color, which is pretty cool. Like you can say green and it will give you a host of green colors to style your apps. So Flutter is using this color scheme to style all its widgets. So all these colors play a particular role. The floating action button is using primary container. Then there's the color on top of that, which is on primary container, which makes sense. And the buttons, elevated button is not really purple anymore or dark color. If you use elevated button in Material 2, you will see it has a really dark color. The moment you enable Material 3, it turns into light button, but it is elevated still. And then the navigation bar is using a different combination of colors for indicator, and there is the indicator color as well. I used this photo yesterday. I took this photo yesterday, and I put this in the slide. So if you have watched the keynote yesterday, you will see that there was a mention of color scheme from image provider. This is what called dynamic color, where Android allow you to create or style your Flutter app with an image. It will pick a common color from an image, and then it will seed that color into the Material Color Utilities, which is like an underhood package that will generate an entire color scheme. This image, even if you don't look at the code, you can see the vast majority of the dominating color is kind of brown. And you can kind of assume what would be the primary color from that. Here, I'm just using a local asset image, but you can also use a network image, or you can create your bitmap or whatever you like. It has to be like an image provider. This is a future, so you should have to put this into a future builder, or you can style particular screen. Like if you have settings screen, you want to have different color, you can wrap your settings screen scaffold in a future builder that will provide this color scheme from image provider will provide a color scheme when you await on it. And then you can update a local theme, for instance. So this is fairly easy to do. The things it is doing under the hood is quite complex, but you don't have to worry about it. You just have to provide an image. So you can see the color scheme again, and this color scheme is using the updated color scheme from the image. The primary color is brown, as we expected, and then there is secondary color, and so on and so forth. And this way, you can not only allow developers or users to customize the app from the wallpaper, or you can also allow users to match the settings color. Like when you run Flutter app, it has its own theme, obviously, right? The baseline color scheme, but you want to use the system color. So you can do that with this. Elevation. Material 3 elevation is a little bit different than Material 2. So I'm going to first talk about the Material 2 elevation. There is a switch button on the top right. You can see it is off. Material 3 is off at the moment. And everybody understands Material 2 elevation. But I will compare that with Material 3 in the later slide. So when you create a scaffold, the scaffold background has the surface color, which is the background color. Then you have a card widget. In this instance, I'm using card widget, but it can be any widget that can be elevated. So the card widget is also just a piece of surface or a material surface. When you elevate a material surface in Material 2, it casts a shadow, right? It indicates the object or the surface is elevated. When the elevation is set to, let's just say, 5 or something, it will cast a 5 elevation shadow. And you can see the intensity of the shadow, and you can determine how high is the card. And you can see the card color is pretty much as background, but because of the shadow, it differentiates, right? And if you put 2 cards on top of each other, you can determine which card is on which by their shadow and the color. If you're not using shadow, you can provide 2 different colors to 2 different cards, and you can see which card is on top of which card. In Material 3, there is something called surface tint color, which confuses a lot of people. They say, I provided a red color to my card, but it does not look exactly red. It looks more red. Why is that? The reason why is Material 3 also has the same surface, but it has an overlay on top of the card color. This overlay indicates how much the card is elevated. Actually, in the Material 3 specs, the material surfaces elevations are indicated by 2 factors: shadow and surface tint color. So you don't have to use shadow to indicate your card is elevated. You can also use surface color to indicate the card is elevated, which is pretty cool. When you overlap 2 cards, in Material 2, you could have only seen the shadow to determine which card is elevated on which card. In Material 3, you can also see the intensity of the surface color. If it has higher value of elevation, it will have a higher intensity of surface color. But you can see the problem here. When I switch the same card to Material 3, they are not white anymore, or they are not neutral as background anymore. Why? Because the surface tint color is taking a color because the card is elevated. If you remove this surface tint color, your card will look neutral as background color. A lot of people like that, so I just wanted to show how to do that. It's very simple. Just set your cards to transparent, set your surface tint color to transparent. You will see the same color as the background if you don't like the surface tint color. Surface tint color is there if you don't want to use shadow, so you can indicate the elevation of the card. Here, so Flutter has 6 levels of elevation by default. If you provide 0, it will have no elevation indication at all. There is no overlay color, which is surface tint color. The card here has 0 elevation. It disappears. There is nothing there. The reason why, because there is no shadow. I have set the shadow to transparent. There is no card color, and there is no surface tint color because the elevation is 0. The card uses, what is surface tint color actually to begin with? It's just using primary color with an opacity value. It sets the opacity value to 0.0 if you have 0 elevation, which means no color at all. But if you have elevation 1, you will have a primary color with a very small opacity, 0.05. If I set the elevation to 12, it will have an color of primary color with an opacity of 0.14. If you set the elevation to 15, let's just say, I'm going like crazy, 15 or 20, something like that, without shadow, because we don't have any shadow to indicate the elevation level anymore here, you can see the color is a little bit different than the 12 color. The 12 elevation color is supposed to be EA, E3, F1, but the card color is a little bit different. Like I said, there are 6 levels, so there should not be a different color at the maximum elevation. Why is that? I'll tell you in the next slide. In the next slide, you can see the apparent color matches now. The reason why it matches, because there is a card color behind the surface tint color. In the previous slide, you can see it's sandwiched between the card color and the surface color. So the background color is peeking through your transparent surface color. So you're seeing some part of the background card color in this case, some part of background color through the surface tint color. It's like looking into a cake where the bottom layer is the cheese and the top layer is the jelly. You can still see the cheese, but you can't see it clearly. You have to finish your jelly first, then you can see the cheese color properly, right? So here I removed, just for the demo purpose, you don't have to do this, just for the demo purposes, I set that card color to transparent. And all the color matches. The maximum color matches the card color as well. Topography. In Material 3, not in Material, in Material 2, we are going back to Material 2. In Material 2, there are 4 groups of typography, and most of the widgets depend on subtitle and body. Some of them use label color like button or overline. Some widgets use headline 6. Very few widgets use headline 1, which is pretty big. And headline 1 to 6 is typically like HTML style typography. But Material 3 really simplifies this. It creates 5 groups of typography where every group has a small, medium, large variation, which makes it a lot easier to scale your typography. Like if you want to support a bigger screen, you just use a bigger font that also scales uniformly. You can see the display large uniformly scales. Small is a small display, and large is a large display. One thing I noticed, if you're using headline 1, in some instances, like for example, a login screen or a splash screen, you would use like a biggest font available. When you use Material 3, it looks a lot smaller. The largest font is smaller in Material 3 than the Material 2. It's also much more bolder. So these groups allow you to use very consistent styling. If you want to create custom widget, you can basically use similar style as Flutter widget. And you don't have unexpected results when you're using different screens or resolution, let's just say. Then, if you have like existing app, most of you obviously will have, if you're using the system theme, like the typography theme from the theme data, like headline 6 or headline 3, when you use Material 3, it will have scribbles. It will be crossed over. It will say it is deprecated, should be used. Use this new typography value. And even though it doesn't throw any error, it's already using display small in this case. You can see, aloe vera, it looks similar, but when you use Material 3, it's headline 3, even though it's deprecated, is pointing to display small. So you just have to switch to display small, but you won't have any error, which is pretty good. There is a popular Material 3 issue. There are like hundreds of comments on this issue. In this issue, you can track all the components, the typography updates, color scheme updates, what's coming, what's missing, what's in progress. If you haven't visited this issue, you have to visit this issue. And those who have already seen this issue, I encourage you to check this again, because it is updated constantly. Like a few months ago, we had like some updates on this, or the description of this issue. So it's worth looking at this issue once again, just to see what is the current status, what are the next steps. I will talk about one major step, which is the use Material 3 flag is set to false by default at the moment on the current stable channel. The plans would be to enable this flag to be to true by default, right? Right? Currently, it is technically false. It is set. It is disabled. In order to switch to material 3, you set it to true. Eventually, it will be set to true by default, so you don't have to do anything to use material. You don't have to do anything to use material 3. Then it will be deprecated eventually, and then it will be removed. So when you're switching to material 3, this flag is a safeguard at the moment. There is a very popular demo. I'm sure you've probably seen it. This demo will have all the widgets you need to switch to material 3. You can compare your material 2 widgets to material 3. You can still use some of the material 2 widgets. If you don't want to switch to material 3, you can still combine those widgets. In this demo, you will be able to play around with all the variations that are introduced. Like there is a fill tonal color button. It is new. You can check that out in material 3 demo. Our goal, like when I'm contributing to the Flutter framework, our goal is to make sure that there is as much as documentation as possible for material 3. Like, it should be as easy as possible for anybody to run into a material 3 widget and then find a material 2 widget and then find a material 3 migration for it. In this case, I added documentation. I added this documentation. I added this example where a toggle button widget can be switched to material 3 version of that widget, which is segmented button. You can still use the same widget, but in this example, I have shown that how you can use both widgets. You can use the same code. You don't have to do a lot of refactoring. And you will find this kind of section in other widgets as well, like in navigation bar. There is a bottom navigation bar in material 2, so you will find this kind of section in the documentation. So if you are using material 2 widget, visit the documentation page of that widget, and then if you find this kind of section, look at that section. And if you see that some widget is missing this kind of documentation, you can file an issue in the GitHub repository. I will probably fix that issue. So. Yeah, thank you so much. If you have any questions, you can reach out.